everybody, and thank you, Tony, for asking me to do this. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be here with you this morning at Sunday Assembly. Last time I read at Sunday Assembly, I think the theme was death, which is quite a wonderful thing for a poet. So it's had lots of poetry about such things, and would have fitted Lynn sat in his graveyard there. My first poem is, I've never read this live before, actually, and this is the first poem from my new book that I've decided to read. And it's about me swimming Durdledore in Dorset. And I was on the beach there last summer, and I was feeling like I wanted a bit of connection to nature and the outdoors. And I was having a bit of an existential crisis, and I don't know why, but I thought if I swam through Durdledore and back again, it might reset me in some way. I'm not sure that it did. But I got back to the beach and I wrote this poem called Swimming Durdledore. And it opens with a quote from a favourite poet of mine, Anne Sexton, that said, "God owns the heavens, but he craves the earth." With a pirate's smile and a bag for life, I met the tide, naked at first light. Crowd surfing the seaweed hands of fans, being carried over the recurring dream of a wave machine, inching through the ghost of a jawbone, threading the Anglo-Saxon loophole, an old wives' tale echoing in the belly of a whale, setting sail from the pebbled cove where each perfect stone is a fallen soul, and better never than late at that ancient gate, adrift like Steve McQueen, butterfly stroking through my papillon dream, attempting to leave this world for the eternal sea, godless yet closer to God, and years from heaven, consumed by forever. And I'm not necessarily a religious person, but it certainly felt like a bit of a spiritual experience to swim Durdledore. This next poem I'd like to continue. Actually, I wrote this poem in Bolton Hospital canteen. I was visiting somebody. I don't just go there to dine. However, I overheard an elderly couple talking in there, and they said the husband said to the wife, said to the husband, "I don't want to die in a place like this. Let's buy a bottle of whiskey and backstroke together into the sea." At which point her husband turned to her and said, "Yeah, all right, love, as long as it's not bells," which I thought was quite wonderful. He wasn't bothered about the suggested suicide pact, but the quality of whiskey in which it would be undertaken with. And I wrote them this, continuing on the theme of the sea, wrote them this speculative poem called The Pact. When their bodies had grown too old and they could no longer be free, they made a pact to backstroke together into the sea, holding hands and a bottle of whiskey, 87 and 93, respectively, moving slowly with the chop of the waves, journeying to eternity, belly up to the gods and the constellations in perfect liberty, expose their final act of love as two skinny dippers in matching slippers. True love really differs, and compelled an otherworldly hand to turn the snow shaker earth on its head and cradle it like a giant tear. And when the blizzard settled, they had both disappeared, their lives reset, born again. Jesus wept. And I'm going to finish with a poem that's not related to the outdoors as well. I suppose it is kind of related to the outdoors. This is based on a lady that I know on a council estate in Wythenshawe, and she wanted some artificial grass in her back garden, and she couldn't quite afford it. So her son went out and liberated some local all-weather football pitch and put that down for her in her back garden. So in her back garden, she's got a little 6-yard box and a penalty spot that's been taken from the local all-weather pitch. And her sister went round to see her and was laughing about this, and it coined the immortal line, "Don't laugh at my astroturf, Diane." Now, if you're interested, if you like this poem, it is available from my collection, the Dandelion Clock. And I also recorded this as a track with Manchester punk band Giant Boys, and it's really cool. It's a really great piece of music that they set to this poem. So here we go. Don't laugh at my astroturf, Diane. Don't laugh at my astroturf, Diane. At least I've not forgotten who I am. It's not so long back your kids used to call me ma'am. So don't you dare laugh at my astroturf, Diane. The lads have rolled that out better than universal credit. Is your new patio paved with the books of Norman Tebbit? On your bike, you're talking tripe. The meek will never inherit. I'm still waiting at the arms window for my direct debit. And so what if my new back lawn has a 6-yard box and a penalty spot? It's my field of dreams. I'm just doing the best with what I've got. I didn't want any charity garden DIY SOS from a crooning Nick Knowles. My little pitch was once graced by an infant Paul Scholes. I've some pride left, leave me with that. My heart's on the breadline, but that's intact. Go on, you can get out. I liked you better when you had notes. And you might be laughing all the way to the food bank next season of giving. My astroturf is just like you, Diane. It's a substitute for the living.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Show your appreciation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wonderful. I was going to ask you about where we can get your poetry, Oliver, but Ian's actually put your website into the chat box, so I'll just, I don't need to recommend it because you've heard how brilliant he is. Lots of comments coming in the chat box, Oliver. Brilliant, moving, powerful. Ian particularly like two skinny dippers in matching slippers. I'll just ask you, Oliver, before we let you go, you did a couple of poems there that related to the outdoors. How important is the outdoors for you, and how have you coped as a writer looking for your inspiration during a year of lockdown?
Oh, massively. You know, I think I've discovered more walking beautiful areas in my local area. I used to turn out of my house and just get the tram into Manchester. And since lockdown, I've walked a lot around Cheshire. My new book actually is a bit of a journey around certain outdoor, landscapes. And it's been really important. I think mental health wise, walking. I mean, I usually write in the working class movement library, so I've had no office or anything really to go to. And the riverside there on good days has certainly been my office. And I feel like a connection to nature is really important. I mean, I read a lot of Ted Hughes and Heaney. So it's been really fundamental to not only my emotional well-being and my mental health, but also my writing practice. Yeah, it's been quite a big thing. Yeah.
Can I just ask you as well? I noticed on social media that you've done some work with one of my comedy heroes recently, a guy called Mark Thomas. Can you tell me a little bit about that project? Because it sounded really interesting.
Oh yeah, I don't know how he got my book from somewhere, and then he's been doing some sort of lockdown shows to raise money for the Trussell Trust and the Samaritans. So I did a little interview with him, and his show is basically music that has been sung to you. And I'd written a poem that my nan sang to me when she was suffering with dementia. She sang "Once I Had a Secret Love" by Doris Day, and it inspired a poem. And Mark loved it. So it was lovely to work with Mark. He's a big hero of mine, and we share the same politics and outlook on life. So yeah, it was a real privilege for me.
Thank you very much. Give it up one more time for the fabulous Oliver Lomax. Thank you so much for joining us today, Oliver.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's been lovely. Thank you.
One of the things I loved about that, a lot of great writers kind of pick up on something that they overhear or a line that they've read somewhere, and it kind of inspires them. I was quite a big fan of Elvis Costello, as I said was, because I changed my mind after he accepted an MBE, but we'll leave that. We'll park that for 1 minute. And there's a great song by Elvis Costello, one of his songs called "The Deep Dark Truthful Mirror." And the opening line is, a butterfly feeds on let me get this right. A butterfly feeds on a dead hedgehog's tear. And it's just an absolutely beautiful line. And Elvis Costello said, David Attenborough said it in one of the nature documentaries, but he just heard David Attenborough say it, wrote it down very quickly, and actually, a dead monkey's tear, not hedgehog. I don't know where I've got hedgehog from. Yeah, from a dead monkey's tear. And he said as soon as he heard it, he thought, that has to be the opening line of one of my songs, and that kind of gave rise to the rest of the song. So I love that idea. Alan Bennett used to do it all the time. Alan Bennett talked about having a notebook in his pocket, and every time he went on public transport, on a bus, on a train, he'd write down things that he overheard, quite voyeuristic in a way, including an old lady who was passing a hospital and said to a friend, "That's the hospital where I had my ex-directory." And you kind of know what she meant. But, the results are in, ladies and gentlemen. For anybody who came a little bit late, who didn't think Sunday Assembly could possibly get any more exciting, we've had a bit of a focus group and asked people what they really wanted from Sunday Assembly. And 87% said some middle-aged bloke doing a lateral flow test live in the Assembly. So we like to give the people what they want. And I can tell you that I've just got one line there, and that means that my lateral flow test today is negative. And also, apparently I'm not pregnant. Yeah, and so you're in safe hands. You can all sit a little bit closer to your computers now. So on the theme of the great outdoors, I'd like to welcome our main speaker today, and she's from the Whitworth Art Gallery, and she's going to tell us a lot more about her work. So please welcome Francine Hayfron. Good morning, Francis.
Good morning.
Before we go any further, we did have a few recommendations about outdoor places. Lynn reckons the beer garden at Lassagowie is his favourite outdoor place. You went for Arley Gardens. Could you tell us where Arley Gardens are and why you chose it?
Yeah, so Arley Hall and Gardens is up by Northwich. And I mean, I love plants, which you'll probably gather as we start talking later. But yeah, it's just a really kind of beautiful, simple gardens, but so much to see and so many kind of different areas to experience. So it's just somewhere that I gravitate to all the time. So if you haven't been, I would recommend going. And it's been open pretty much still all through the pandemic as well. So that's really, really good.
Thank you very much, Francine. So we like to think that every guest we have on here is unique. Certainly our poet is absolutely unique, but you are categorically unique because you've got a job title, which is the only one in the country. Have I got that right? You tell us.
That is correct, and apparently the world, but who knows?
Okay. Tell us your job title and tell us a little bit about what that job entails.
Okay, so I have what sounds like a rather grand title, Cultural Park Keeper, for the Whitworth Art Gallery in Manchester. And that grand title essentially means that I'm responsible for the outdoor programme at the Whitworth. So I don't know if, in case you don't know the Whitworth, it is based
Sorry, Francine, I'm just losing the connection, Francine. I can't hear you very well. Just take it
University Manchester, and 14. It has the focus of really was to embrace the park, because it's, along with Salford Gallery, it's one of the few galleries that are located right in the middle of a park. And what we wanted to do really was, I think, to recognise that there was probably people who were not necessarily connecting with the gallery as such. I think when you look at it from the front, it can look like a bit of an austere kind of grand Victorian building, but yet we're located right in a ward that is so diverse, so ethnically diverse. So it was about really sort of embracing the park as well. And I think there are people who were quite keen to engage with things that were happening outside in the park. And so that's how the post of Cultural Park Keeper came about. And also, I mean, I'm in my 40s, so I remember the time when we did have park keepers when I was quite young. And, you know, obviously through the years and decades with cuts and all sorts of things to parks and green spaces, that idea of the park keeper seems to have disappeared. But way back when, the park keeper was not only responsible for the maintenance of the grounds, but was that person that would also kind of engage with the community and have activities. So it was kind of that sense of bringing that back. So I don't stand there in the middle of the park telling people to keep off the grass. That bit's long gone. But it's about engaging people with nature and the outdoors. And also particularly, we're right in the city, really urban. And so many people have become disconnected with nature and the outdoors. So yeah, when I saw the job, it was just like, I've got to go for this. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's how came about.
I do remember park keepers, but it was generally retired military men shouting at people to keep off the grass, wasn't it? So
yeah, never anyone who looked like me, that's for sure.
How is your approach different? Or let me put that a slightly different way. Why do you think it's so important for people to engage with nature in a society where we might be losing it, where lots of kids are staring into laptops and Game Boys?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think, like I said, particularly in urban areas and in the cities, you know, where green spaces are becoming less with redevelopments and flats and all of that. And also, like you say, there is the phenomenon, get that word right, nature deficit disorder, where many children and adults kind of growing up with a lack of connection to nature. And I think the important thing is that the connection with nature and us as humans is there from since the dawn of time, basically. And I think as time has gone on, with everything being built up and technology and all of these things, we're kind of forgetting that. And I think the pandemic a little bit, which we'll probably talk about, is sort of reminding people of that now. But it's built into us. We need nature to survive, and nature needs us to survive. So I guess that's kind of what is driving me at the moment, just to get people to remember that. And fortunately, I think people are recognizing that, and you can find lots of books and lots of things now telling about the importance of getting outside and plants and connecting to nature. So it's always been there. It's part of us, and we are part of nature. So it's just, we need to remember that.
I mean, he's just mentioned Fletcher Moss Park in Didsbury, which I agree.
Yes, yeah, I agree too.
I grew up in the kind of era where there was only 2 or 3 television channels and the most primitive computer games.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think back, I must have been incredibly super fit as a kid, because my feet never touched the ground for about 15 years. I just wanted to kick a football and run around. And do you think it's about getting kids who haven't grown up in that environment to realise the positives of that kind of environment and that lifestyle?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm the same. I mean, I grew up, you could probably tell from my accent, I'm from London originally, but I've lived in Manchester now for about 25 years. And, even growing up in London in the late 70s and early 80s, I think, it's that thing you said, when it was the holidays, you'd be out as soon as you'd had your breakfast, and you wouldn't come back in until your mum was dragging you to come back in. It was dark. And I think that's kind of definitely lost. And I think that's really important. I mean, I've got a 13-year-old daughter, and that kind of consuming of phones and screens and everything, they are losing that. And so I think that's really important to kind of get back out there again, get the kids back out there again. And, all the things with illnesses and things, we have to get outside, we have to connect to dirt. And that helps build immune systems as well. So there's so many reasons as to why it's important.
My memory of being a child is lots of mums and dads from the place where I live screaming at the kids to come in when it got dark.
Yes.
We have the opposite now. Where
get out.
Let's not talk about that. That's a different matter. But in the general run of things, parents want to drag the kids off the computers and the TVs, don't they? Can you tell us a little bit about your, to use an X Factor word, journey? So you're talking about being a young girl in London.
Yeah.
What led you to being in the role that you're currently in? When did your passion for nature first start to get triggered?
Okay, well, I think my passion for nature got triggered quite a little bit later in life. I think when I ended up in Manchester originally for university, and I studied languages. And so I had the opportunity, probably won't happen now for students with Brexit and all, but to be able to go away and live for a year. And so I was thinking about this before, and I think the connection came. So I studied French and Spanish. And so I lived in France, in Grenoble, which was a wonderful place in the southeast of France. But the beautiful thing about it was you lived in a city, but it was like a valley, and you had the Alps obviously kind of nearby you. So within 10 minutes you could drive to the mountains or some wonderful walks. And I think for me that was my first proper connection, because other than that I just grown up in built up London, and then obviously when I first came to Manchester for a bit. So that's when I really started to discover, I think, the connection with nature and going for walks and everything. So so that was when I first recognized it. But in terms of coming to the role, my journey's kind of, I've done all sorts really. So I think after leaving university and things, I worked in radio, and as a radio producer, a music radio producer. And then in 2007, I gave birth to my daughter. And it was at that point I realized, I can't be chasing DJs all around the place and doing interviews. It's time for a new career. And I think I had sort of slowly gravitated to this real interest in plants in particular and gardening. And so for me then it was like, well, what do I love just as much as music? And it was like, yes, it's kind of the outdoors, and in particular working with people and with plants. So I ended up working for an organisation in the city of Salford, which was an arts and wellbeing organisation that used the arts and horticulture to work with people who struggling with difficulties with mental health. And it's there that I really found my groove and was like, this is so powerful to use the creative arts and horticulture to work with people. Yes, Minnie's put in the chat, sorry, Start. It was Start in Salford, if anybody knows that. So that's where I worked for about 6-7 years. And then although I love doing that, there was a lot of the health and social care kind of elements, which, I hadn't originally kind of gone into that side for training, but it was absolutely fascinating. Met wonderful people, still friends with many of the members there and the staff. But then when the job came up at the Whitworth for this new role in cultural park keeper, for me, it was just the perfect fit. I was able to bring everything that I'd done before through the creative arts industry together, and alongside a real focus to use the outdoors to help people improve their health and well-being. So it was kind of like written for me in a sense. So that's how I ended up, yes, at the Whitworth, and I've been there now for coming on to 7 years.
Following on from that, Francine,
yes.
You actually just posted something about a project about finding a quiet spot in your garden and meditation accompanied by the sounds of nature.
Yes.
It's an opportunity for you to maybe talk about what the current projects are and what kind of plans you've got for future projects.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, that's how I met Judith and Minnie actually. So in 2019, I set up a program which is called the Natural and Cultural Health Service, and I'll put a link in the chat. And that was about using the natural asset that we have, Whitworth Park, as a way to help people improve their health and well-being. So we run lots of different activities, and the one where we met is meditation in nature. And so in normal times, this does happen out in the park or in this wonderful internal kind of garden space that we have in the Whitworth, the Orchard Garden. And it's with a wonderful facilitator called Claire Morris. And so we would normally have done that outside, but then obviously the pandemic came and lockdown hit us. And I definitely recognised it's important more than ever now to make sure that people still connect with nature. So we've been doing these sessions online on Zoom, and basically if people can get outside with their phone or their laptop, wonderful. But if not, we encourage people to, take a little spot by the window somewhere and just make sure that they have that visual to the outside. And I think Minnie and Judith would agree that those sessions are wonderful. And I am someone who's always struggled with meditation. If you sit in a group and I've always struggled, but there's something about doing meditation in nature that just really helps to kind of focus the mind and empty everything out. So that's what we do. So I'll put the link in the chat, and the sessions are free. They're twice a week. Not twice a week, sorry, twice a month, at the beginning of the month and at the end. So please do come along. And we do loads of other things as well. So we've got a Gardening for Good Health project, which is Grow, which has been running since I started. And lots of other things, mindfulness in nature for children as well, there's a whole list of things. So, at your leisure, you can look at the site and go through. So that's kind of what we've been doing during lockdown. And it's really, really working, actually, I have to say. And we've managed to also kind of increase numbers because there's not that barrier of actually being able to get to the gallery physically. So we've had people join us from all over, like you probably do with Sunday Assembly, not just within Manchester. And with regards to the future, I guess, in that sense, social prescribing is a big thing. And so for anybody who doesn't know about social prescribing, it's about where community organisations and projects and things happening are able to kind of support, I guess, in terms of health and social care. So many people are going to GPs and things because they're suffering from things like anxiety and stuff, and more social problems, whether it's losing employment or whatever. And actually, there are other activities that can support people to go through this, like, you know, we've talked about using the arts and gardening. And so people have been talking about this for many, many years. But it seems like now with the pandemic, the health commissioners and the government and people are now starting to recognise, like, oh, actually, yes, this can do something and help to support the NHS. And so that's the future really for Natural and Cultural Health Service to become a socially prescriptive programme, so that more people can access and know the benefits of connecting with the outdoors.
I think the information you sent to me, you mentioned something about an anti-racist project as well.
Yes. So yeah, I guess, yeah. So it's a bit different from the outdoors, but I guess it's another thing that I've been busy with during the lockdown, because obviously last summer with lots of the kind of global protests that have been going on around the world, the Whitworth, we recognised, like many other organisations probably, just to kind of relook at ourselves and, you know, just to kind of see and check how we could be more of an anti-racist organisation. And I won't go on about it too much, but, you know, with museums and galleries, and specifically contemporary art galleries, I still think there's a kind of image of it being a really kind of middle class, and really the majority of visitors being white, really, and, you know, not people from Black and brown communities. And as I say, we, the Whitworth, we're right bang in the middle of a very diverse community. So we set up an anti-racist group during the summer, and it's just to relook at everything from our collections to who we engage with. And it's been really, really interesting, really interesting. And for me in particular, and the role that I do with the outdoors and the environment, there's still so little representation of people of colour in these roles. So for me, it just kind of seems the perfect fit, because yes, Black and brown people are interested in gardening and getting outside as well, you know. So it's just kind of about being more visible and yeah, just getting out there and encouraging people not to be afraid and yeah, to engage.
How do you target people? Because obviously you know, you're doing all these projects and you want as many people, as many different age groups and ethnicities and both genders. So how do you actually reach out to people?
I think local partners are really important. For me, that kind of underpins everything. You know, we're not in competition, we're all to it together. So I very much kind of get out and meet community partners. And also that's the beauty of the thing of being in a park. You can be very visible. And I think once you're there and you're doing an activity, people are always quite curious, oh, you know, kind of what's going on and things. And just by talking, being personable and, you know, talking to people. So be engaged in that ways. I do use the power of social media at the minute. That's been really, really, I guess, useful in these times as well. And yeah, it's just by doing interesting things, but I think it's about getting out there and meeting people and talking to people about it and sharing experiences.
You said you've got a 13-year-old daughter, so I'm guessing she's back to school and hopefully they're all doing their...
Yes, as soon as you did that, I thought, right, we're starting this week.
She inherited your passion for nature as a 13-year-old, and how does she feel about going back to school?
Okay, so at the minute, in terms of inheriting the passion for nature, I'm just going to be honest with you and probably say no. I mean, when she was younger, yes, but you know, that's the way teenagers are and they gravitate back. Like I said, I didn't get into it later in life, so I'm hoping, praying that as she gets older, she will reconnect with that. And in terms of going back to school, I think it's 50-50. They're glad to be going back and seeing their friends and things in the flesh, but I think she's definitely not looking forward to the lateral flow testing. I don't blame her, I wouldn't either. But yeah, on the whole, I think probably secretly she's quite happy to get back.
As we're coming out of this kind of roadmap, I'd be interested in what your kind of reopening target is, but also what advice would you give to people? What we don't want to do is suddenly start meeting in festivals with thousands of people in the same field, or barbecues in crowded gardens. What would your advice be in terms of how people should come out of this situation and start to re-engage with nature?
Good question. I think that, I mean, yeah, so we're hoping to reopen back kind of the early summer, late spring, early summer. In terms of people getting back, I mean, it's a funny one, that, because I'm hoping that we don't forget all the lessons that we've actually learned during lockdown about going slower and, you know, just embracing the beauty that might be in our own gardens or in our own local park. So I also recognise that probably people who beforehand didn't make sure that they went for a walk every day or didn't spend enough time in their garden. I'm hoping people continue with those things, because even with the effects of climate change and everything, we've noticed like the difference and the improvements, you know, kind of less air travel and stuff. So I'm hoping that people still hold on to the things that they've been doing during the lockdown, but are obviously still aware of, I guess, there's still sort of elements of danger. So just to go slow, really, but just not forget how they've connected to nature during this time.
Let me really put you on the spot with my last question.
Okay.
I'm going to take you back to a previous life that I've just learned about today.
Okay.
Involved in music, radio production and music and so on. Let's play Desert Island Discs. I'm not going to ask you to name eight records to take to a desert island because we haven't got time.
8.
Have you got a couple of pieces of music that you absolutely love that you could name and tell us why?
Okay, so Marvin Gaye, definitely. What's Going On? Great tune. I'd take that. Oh, this is really hard, you know. Because I love lots of music. There definitely have to be some jazz in there because I grew up on jazz. My dad was a huge jazz fan. So Ray Charles is one of our favourites. And okay, I'll go with something very recent. So in terms, there's a band that are called Salt. So if you've never heard of them, check them out. It's SAULT. And they brought out during the lockdown 2 amazing, fantastic long player albums. And check it out. It's a whole mixture of stuff, but the lyrics are quite conscious. It did reflect a lot of what has been happening in the time during the lockdown. So they'd be my 3.
That's a brilliant answer, considering I put you on the spot. I would also recommend the What's Going On album by Marvin Gaye is one of the greatest albums
Yes.
recorded as well. I'm totally with you on that one. Okay, everybody, can you please show your appreciation for an absolutely fantastic guest speaker today?
Oh, thank you for having me.